College locked up. However, that did not stop us from planning and executing a number of events in honor of Netaji. We were able to organize on with the digital platform a number of extremely enriching lectures delivered by such eminent scholars like the likes of Dr. Purabi, whom we are very fortunate to have with us again today, Dr. Chandra and Dr. Purabi. Apart from that, we were also able to do a number of other events as well. For example, we were able to organize our national level online essay competition for students, obviously, to celebrate not only the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji, but also that of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who also happens to be one of our most another illustrious alumni. The forthcoming college magazine that will be published shortly would also contain a very special section on Netaji again. Another very important event that took place during the year-long celebration was the inauguration of a digital exhibition which contains certain archival documents showcasing the life of Netaji as a student in this college. Whatever we were able to gather as an institution was able to showcase how Netaji was very, very emotionally attached and close to his dear alma mater. We are extremely happy and excited that we are now able to bring the exhibition in a physical form in front of all of us. We have gathered here in the first part of our today's program in order to inaugurate this particular exhibition, a permanent exhibition, which not only celebrates the life of Netaji as a student in this college, but also the life of Swami Vivekananda, another great illustrious alumni of this college during his days in this institution. The exhibits include a number of rare documents, including Narendranath Datta or Vivekananda's university results, reports of the Philosophical Society that saw the participation of both these great luminaries, and perhaps the most prized possession that we have of all is a personally autographed document belonging to Netaji Subhas Chandra. I am honored and delighted to now welcome our chief guest of honor today, Dr. Purabi, to kindly inaugurate the exhibition. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome the chief speaker of today, Professor Sujata Mukherjee from University. We are very honest to listen to her speaking on Netaji in the second part of today's program. I would now like to request our principal ma'am, Dr. Mukherjee, our vice principal, Dr. Das, Secretary College Council, Dr. S. Mukherjee, our IPS coordinator, Dr. Netaji, Bursar, Dr. Bose, Senator Secretary, Dr. Dinisha Sinha, and the members of the Scottish Church College Former Students Association, Secretary Dr. Sujata, Dr. Shuman Puri, and Vice President Sri Sharon Dev Mukherjee to kindly assist Dr. Roy in inaugurating the exhibition. We are almost done with first part of our program, I believe, and I thank everyone for inaugurating this very, very precious and special exhibition for our institution. We would like to take a small break after this, a small tea or coffee break because we need a bit of a technical time after this visit.
এটা তো কভার এটা
আপনি কত করে এদিকে দাঁড়ালে তাহলে লাইটটা তুলে নিয়ে চলে যাবো। তোমার গ্রুপ ছবি হচ্ছে, লাইভ বন্ধ করে দাও, বন্ধ করে দাও, পজ করে দাও, রেকর্ডিং বন্ধ করেছি। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, এদিকে সবাই।
Swami distribute.
We will start shortly, so please settle down, and if you have friends outside, call them in.
দেখবো দেখবো
Can I have your attention, please? Students, please settle down. So we're about to start with the second part of our program, where we are very keen to listen to Professor Sujata Mukherjee from Ravindra Bharati University with regards to our favorite alumni of the college, Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. But we would like to start the program with a little cultural activity, and I request Dr. Shreya Sheikh of the Department of Teacher Education to kindly welcome our guests with the inaugural song.
নমস্কার, আজকে আমি যে গানটি গাইব সেটি দ্বিজেন্দ্রলাল রায়ের লেখা এবং এটি নেতাজির পছন্দের অন্যতম গানের একটি। রতনে ভূষণে সাজিয়ে দাও আজি নূতন রতনে ভূষণে যতনে প্রকৃতি সতীরে সাজিয়ে দাও আজি নূতন রতনে ভূষণে যতনে প্রকৃতি সতীরে সাজিয়ে দাও আজি সাগরে ভুবনে আকাশে পবনে নূতন কিরণ ছড়িয়ে দাও আজি নূতন রতনে ভূষণে যতনে প্রকৃতি সতীরে সাজিয়ে দাও আজি পুরানো যা কিছু দাও মুছিয়ে মলিন যা কিছু ফেলো মুছিয়ে পুরানো যা কিছু দাও মুছিয়ে মলিন যা কিছু ফেলো মুছিয়ে শ্যামলে কোমলে কনকে নীলকে ভূষিত করিয়ে দাও আজি নূতন রতনে ভূষণে যতনে প্রকৃতি সতীরে সাজিয়ে দাও আজি বিনায় মুরাজে সনরে কলজে জাগিয়া উঠো গীতি গো আজি হিয়ার মাঝারে জগতে বাহিরে বলিয়া উঠো গীতি গো আজি বিনায় মুরাজে সনরে কলজে জাগিয়া উঠো গীতি গো আজি হিয়ার মাঝারে জগতে বাহিরে বলিয়া উঠো গীতি গো আজি আজি নূতন আলোকে নূতন ফুলকে গাও ভাষায় ফুলকে দুলকে নূতন আলোকে নূতন ফুলকে গাও ভাষায় ফুলকে দুলকে নূতন হাসিতে বাসনা রাশিতে জীবন মনন ভরিয়ে দাও আজি নূতন রতনে ভূষণে যতনে প্রকৃতি সতীরে সাজিয়ে দাও আজি সাগরে ভুবনে আকাশে পবনে নূতন কিরণ ছড়িয়ে দাও আজি নূতন রতনে ভূষণে যতনে প্রকৃতি সতীরে সাজিয়ে দাও
A very big thank you to Dr. Sen. We would now like to proceed with our program. I would request our dignitaries to please come up on stage. Our principal man, Dr. Mukherjee, our vice principal, Dr. Sujata Das, Secretary College Council, Dr. S.K. Mukherjee, our speaker of the day, Professor Sujata Mukherjee, and our chief guest of honor, Dr. Purabi. I would now like to request our principal ma'am, Dr. Madhumanjari Mondal, to kindly inaugurate this session with the welcome address.
Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Purabi Roy, guest of honor of today's program, Professor Sujata Mukherjee, honorable speaker, who will deliver her speech on Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, Dr. Shapon Kumar Mukherjee, secretary of the governing council of our college, Dr. Supratim Das, vice principal of our college, honorable internal management committee members, Dr. Rajashree Ghosh, Dr. Shamrat Bhattacharjee, Dr. Vidisha Sinha, Dr. Narayan Chandra Das, honorable executive committee members of former Student Association of Scottish Church College, and honorable members of former Student Association of our college, my respected colleagues, my beloved students, ladies and gentlemen. On this auspicious moment, on behalf of Scottish Church College family, I welcome you all. It is my great pleasure to let you know that we, the Scottish Church College, in collaboration with former Students Association of SCC, had organized a year-long program in commemoration of the 125th birth anniversary of one of our illustrious alumni, Sri Subhas Chandra Basu. The celebration began with a digital exhibition on Netaji on 23rd January 2021. On 30th July, a seminar was organized on INA and Secret Services of Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, which was delivered by none other than Professor Purabi Roy, one of our eminent alumni, who has also helped us in selecting the winners of the National Essay Competition, which was organized by our Literary Society of the Literary Club run by our students. And the two topics were relevance of Netaji in contemporary youth society, and second one, spirituality in the modern world. And this competition was organized in commemoration of 125th birth anniversary of Netaji and Prabhupada, and all of you know that both of them were our former students. And we jointly organized webinar with our former student association on 12th November 2021, where the eminent historians like Professor Shurunjan Das and Professor Arun Bandyopadhyay presented their papers on Netaji. At last, we have come to an end of this great celebration, and I'm thankful especially to our Vice Principal, Dr. Supratim Das, who is also a renowned historian who took initiatives with great care to organize such seminars and webinars, and I think he deserves a round of applause. I also would like to mention the name of our former principal, Dr. Mukherjee, who actually planned many things and which we have just followed in due course of time. The gallery which we have inaugurated was her plan. We have just fulfilled her wish. In all our ventures, who always encouraged us was Dr. Shapun Kumar Mukherjee with his valuable suggestions. Thank you, sir. The Joint Secretaries of Pharma Student Association, Dr. Shadananda Bhattacharya and Mr. Shuman Kumar Chaudhary helped us immensely to organize these programs throughout the year. At last, but not the least, I am ever grateful to Almighty who guided us all through our way to reach the destination. In this pandemic, we could celebrate this event only by the grace of God. I wish all the best to the organizing team today, headed by Dr. Srimoy Thakurata and Dr. Aniruddha Chatterjee. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the warm welcome. And now we would like to extend that welcome to our guests today by felicitating them with some very humble gifts from our side. I would request our students to kindly assist our principal ma'am, Dr. Madhumanjali Mandal, in honoring our chief guest of honor, Dr. Purabi. I would like now to request our Secretary, College Council, Dr. S.K. Mukherjee, to kindly honor our speaker of the day, Professor Sujata Mukherjee. Sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I would now like to request Dr. Mukherjee to kindly address the audience. Sir.
Respected Dr. Purabi, respected Dr. Sujata Mukherjee, our beloved principal, Dr. Madhumanjali Mandal, beloved vice principal, Dr. Shukrati Das, and the former, honorable former students of the college who are jointly organizing this anniversary function, and all other members of teaching staff, non-teaching staff, and our very dear, beloved students who are assembled here, and all other listeners who might be listening through YouTube channel later on. We are in the process of concluding the celebration of our 25th birth anniversary of our illustrious alumni. Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. In other words, it is the culminating speech by one of the very eminent speaker, Dr. Sujata Mukherjee. Through, as we have already heard from the principal, for last 1 year we have been having various seminars with very renowned speakers on the life and various aspects of Subhas Chandra Bose. We call illustrious. Why illustrious? His valor, patriotism, sacrifice for freedom of India, indomitable spirit, and novel approach to achieve freedom by escaping out of the country, deceiving the British police, and consolidating armies, the soldiers, Indian soldiers outside India who were fighting for the British, consolidating them for his cause, and finally by convincing many world leaders to passionately obtain help in this process of freeing India from British rule from outside. As a youth in his 30s, Subhas dreamt India to emerge as a great power in the world and will be a model to the post-colonial world through economic unity and harmony of different communities. Netaji advocated gender equality and harmony of different religious traditions of India through his Azad Hind Fauj, or Indian National Army. His most trusted lieutenant was Sri Abid Hasan, who proved his faithfulness at all times. He wanted to use Urdu words in his speeches in Indian National Army as also a mode of harmony among the community. So he took lesson for this from Prem Saigal. He addressed, "हम जिंदा हो या मरे, वो कोई बात नहीं है। सही बात यही है, अहम बात यही है कि हिंदुस्तान आजाद हो गया." Once Subhas Bose said, "Forget not that grossest crime is to compromise with injustice and wrong." Once again, I repeat, grossest crime is to compromise with injustice and wrong. Remember the internal law. You must give if you want to get something. You must give if you want to get something. And that is why he gave the clarion call, "Give me blood, I will give you freedom." He encouraged failure in several occasions, but he converted them to triumph by sheer struggle and indomitable spirit. All his speeches and actions are of contemporary relevance in the world and can be applied to Indian situation even after about 100 years. Youths were encouraged by his call and were also inspired by his charisma. I was trying to analyze Subhas's leadership under the scanner of management principles. What are the qualities required from a leader? According to management principles, absolute integrity, courage, goal or focus, good communicator, sacrifice, ability to inspire, knows the path, shows the path, take risk, empathy for followers. So these are, as per management principles, the qualities of leaders. And we find all these qualities are existing in the life and work, lifestyle, work and action and speeches we found in Subhas Chandra Bose. But these principles were evolved after Subhas Chandra Bose. The management, theory of management, all this came after Second World War. So we find that the qualities which are described are already there in the life and activities, philosophy of Subhas Chandra Bose. Because management is not a science nor an art, but it's a mixture of both on the basis of the leadership qualities found in different great leaders. So that is why the great leaders can be chosen from the people by seeing this quality which was there in the life of Subhas Chandra Bose. I'm sorry to have bored you for so long, since we are eagerly waiting to hear from the scholarly speaker, Dr. Sujata Mukherjee. But all this purpose, this should not be just a ritual to celebrate 125th year, maybe after 120, 150 years, but this will give respect, prudence to this celebration if we take these principles which I have mentioned in the life of Subhas Chandra Bose in our life, whatever profession we are in, whether teacher, whether administrator, whether in any other vocation. But if we have all these things, in these qualities at least in some amount, then we will be successful in our life. This is a glorious day. This is a blessed day, since we could finally meet physically and also talk offline in this issue, in this function. And so I call it a glorious day when we remember all together, students, former students, and management, and our guests of honor, the speakers in a physical platform. Thank you very much.
A very warm thank you to Dr. Mukherjee for setting the stage for what is to come in this particular program. Now, I will request Dr. Purabi to address the audience. To have you and not hear you speak is not a choice we would like to exercise. A very brief introduction, ma'am, before you, even though you don't require any introduction, but still let me introduce you to my students. She is, of course, first and foremost an alumnus of this college. She has been the professor of the Department of International Relations in Jadavpur University for over more than 3 decades. She has been the visiting professor at Moscow State University and St. Petersburg University, Russian Federation. She specializes in Indo-Russian relations and studied Russian archives on Netaji for over a decade. And the product of that was the book that was published in 2011 entitled Search for Netaji New Findings, which opened up a new arena with regards to Netaji studies and research on Netaji. With not much time wasting, ma'am, please welcome her with a round of applause.
Good afternoon to everybody. The respected people who are sitting in the presidium, my beloved and affectionate Mukherjee, Professor Dr. S.K. Mukherjee, Supreme of course, alumnus as well as a good historian. My God! I never expected this. And Sujata, she belongs to Scottish as well as Jadavpur University. Not Scottish? All the misfiring is going on at this age. And my beloved students and children, who are the future of this generation, from whom I will expect that they will do something after reading, after attending so many lectures, and about Subhas Chandra Bose. Now let me make a very short, brief, sketchy life of Subhas Chandra Bose, because his mentor was Vivekananda. If you read very critically the Bengal Renaissance, in Bengal Renaissance when Ram Mohan Roy is coming, Bishop Sen is coming, but this the Vidyasagar is there, but Ramakrishna, he wouldn't do, I mean, he can speak well, he can communicate well, but he teaches, he taught well, but for the propaganda, but for the universal knowing, he appointed his son, his disciple, Vivekananda. That the torch of Bengal Renaissance, Vivekananda took, and he was supposed to spread all over the world. Unfortunately, time was short, he was sick, and for that thing, the torch was handed over to young Subhas. Vivekananda entered Subhas's life at the age of 15 only, started reading his books, his teachings, and after that, when he joined Presidency College coming to Calcutta and all, he found that in Presidency College there is a neo-Vivekanandan group who are giving more stress on spiritualism, which Subhas didn't accept much. Lot of discussions were used to go on, but there was a tendency of Subhas to organize a big group to fight for the truth, to see for the countries. I mean, mother is the everything for him as a growing young but nationalist. So at this age, when he found that one after the other, the insult is going on from the professor's side, altercation is going on with the professors and the students, he revolted. As a revolt, he had to leave the college, not only but the university also. That means he won't get the permission to read in any one of the universities. Then he went back to Cuttack and met the many sadhus to find out the truth of life, where he found that no, dharma is the work, and dharma is the nationalism which I am going to work. Ultimately he came back, he returned. Then there was a ray of hope to get a chance in Calcutta. One more college, Bangladeshi College was there, and the next offer came to Scottish Church College. Immediately he was so happy that he got the admission here with the help of Sir Mukherjee, and this is our college to decide. But this is not only our college, this is college of Subhas Chandra Bose, and this is the college of Vivekananda. We are, and in a way, we are disciples, we are students, and we are followers. I'm not telling followers because there are many followers in many ways. Now this Subhas slowly started improving himself, went to England, came back, left ICS, joined politics, and he became a Desh Shivak. Not Desh Nayak, but Desh Shivak, according to Chittaranandas. After Desh Shivak, when he was serving his country, day in and day out, either outside the bar or behind the bar. Either outside the bar or really a person who wants to do something is most of the time behind the bar. Ultimately in Mandalay, he was there for 2 years. Then he had been sent abroad, so the Britishers wanted to get rid of his all sorts of troubleshooter, Subhas Chandra Bose. And there also he got extraordinary knowledge from the European society, meeting people and all. 33 to 36, it was a marvelous time for him. He served as an ambassador because the Britishers never allowed to go pass any news from India to abroad. So that was finished. After that, he came back. He was elected as a president, and the factionalism entered into the Congress movement. Because such a young boy, at this age, Many contenders were there, many opponents were there. So 38 is a brilliant part of his work also. But at the same time, he had to face a lot of trouble that time. And then 39, he never wanted to attend this presidency. But even then the left, the whole left regime, what he felt, that not the right only will do something for the country in the Congress, that the left are joining, one way or another, the other of Vivekananda, and there are many groups were coming one after the other. So the left consolidated committee, LCC was formed, and he was hopeful. 39, there was a single vote from the right Congress. All the left people voted for Subhas. And all these left people did vote to bring back Subhas. But even then, you know, politics, inner politics, he was bound to live abroad. And then this Shivak Subhas became the strategist, because that he learned it from Scottish Church College. In the Scottish Church College, there was some good announcement, somewhere noticed that the boys can join the, I think Sujata will be able to say, that the boys can join the military training, like our NCC type of thing. So that made him give a complete education in the field of war and the strategic studies, as well as an armed forces to know. People, they criticize very much that he was just an ordinary student, of course, student of philosophy. He has got a good, what he calls the political thinking, and he can become, these things are there. But apart from that, he became strategist. And this strategist was brought by Rashbiari Bose to Southeast Asia to lead Indian National Army and to form the government Arzi Hukumate Azad Hind. And that was his excellent, what we call in Bengal, Jata, Antujati Chal Chile. Nobody expected that Arzi Hukumate Azad Hind will take him to that, up to that point, where he got so many help from so many sides. He never used to belong to the Axis or the Allied powers and what we call it during this world-making Second World War theater. He was neither belonged to Axis power nor belonged to Allied power. He was the third force coming with the help of the Soviet Union. The Soviet constantly helped him, and the Soviet gave him all the protection. Soviet gave him the plan, and ultimately we got our revolutionary icon. Today, I salute that 125 years are over, and we are going to listen a very interesting lecture which Sujata is going to outline it. I'm not going to, I'm going to listen it, and hope the children, you take a special effort to listen, that something new will come out from there. I hope that you will like the lecture, and you will try to follow the lecture, and later on, I don't know, Sujata will be around to give us a chance to question and answer. And I wish all the best for Sujata. Later, have a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. It is always a delight to listen to you. Now let's proceed with the program, and I will request our Vice Principal, Dr. Das, to kindly introduce our speaker and the technical session. Sir.
Very good afternoon. Really, I feel honored and delighted, and I think it's my great privilege to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Sujata Mukherjee, to you who are present here in this seminar hall right now, and also to all the viewers who may be watching this program on a virtual platform. Sujata Mukherjee, he happens to be a very good and old friend of mine, my senior, my colleague and head of the department in Rabindra Bharati when I taught over there for more than 2 decades. And of course, we are friends for the last 3 decades. Now, Professor Sujata Mukherjee is currently Professor of History at Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata. She was formerly Dean of the Arts Faculty and also Director, Center for Gandhian Studies in this university. She was ICCR Chair for Modern Indian Studies at Victoria University, Wellington, New Zealand, and was a recipient of Wellcome Trust Postdoctoral Research Grant Award in History of Medicine and remained associated with UCL London, UK. In 2018, Professor Mukherjee visited and remained associated to the Rockefeller Archives Center, Sleepy Hollow, New York, USA, as a Rockefeller Fellow. Professor Mukherjee also served as visiting professor and visiting fellow in different institutions, including Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, Vishwabharati University, Shantiniketan, and Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. Dr. Mukherjee has published extensively on different aspects of women's history, history of science, technology, medicine, environment, and also social history of modern India. Her book-length publications include Gandhian Views on Education, Life and Ideas of Bijoy Krishna Goswami in Bengali, 1841-1899, Situating Tagore's Environmentalism, Environmental Degradation and Rabindranath's Activism, Gender, Medicine and Society in Colonial India, Women's Healthcare in 19th and early 20th century Bengal. Her most recent publications include a significant essay titled Medicine and Public Health in Modern Bengal, 1850-1950. It was published in a very memorable book in a series edited by late Professor Sabyasachi Bhattacharya. The name of the series was A Comprehensive History of Modern Bengal, and her article was published in volume 2. And also an article titled Imperialism, Medicine and Women's Health in 19th Century India, published in Her Story, Essays on Women's History in honor of Professor Geraldine Forbes. Now, today she will speak on a comparatively, I think, it's very interesting and it's a very provoking subject because not much discussion has been discernible in this particular field. She will speak on Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, his legacy and vision of independent India. So, what could have been done had Subhas really been alive, and what were his dreams, what were in his planning about India once India becomes free. So, I repeat, Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, his legacy and vision of independent India. I request everybody, especially the students, to keep your mobile phones on silent mode. So over to today's speaker, Professor Sujata Mukherjee.
Thank you, Sujata, for your very generous introduction. And good afternoon to everyone. I would like to begin by expressing my heartfelt thanks to the organizers of this event, and especially the principal of this prestigious institution, and of course Professor Supratim Das, for inviting me here and giving me this wonderful opportunity to share some of my thoughts on Netaji's contributions towards India's nation building. I feel absolutely privileged and honored to be able to give this talk on a great freedom fighter, one of the most charismatic leaders India have ever seen. And this is my homage and my humble tribute to this great leader who not only fought valiantly for our freedom, but also made unforgettable contributions towards India's nationalist reconstruction. I'm sure that there have been many interesting discussions and talks by many eminent scholars, avid researchers on the occasion of this celebration and commemoration which have been going on in this institution for more than a year. And many of you, particularly I'm talking about the students, perhaps already heard many speakers, many eminent speakers. And I presume many of whom are present today. Purabi is of course here, and we have also learned a lot about Netaji's contributions from Purabi and other eminent researchers in this field. Now, however, I have often felt that conventional historical accounts on Netaji have failed to do justice on his many faceted achievements, and especially have not been able to adequately capture or made an effort to understand the tremendous significance of his role in India's nationalist reconstruction. I would like to argue that his contributions and achievements are not only limited to the situation prevailing in pre-independent India, but history of contemporary India or post-1947 India's developments in different fields also are based on very much on Netaji's visions and previous organizational works. As Purabi has mentioned, and I fully agree with that, that he was not only, he was a Desh Sevak also. He was not only just a fighter for freedom, but he always wanted to serve India in more than one capacities. So post-1947 India, under the Prime Ministership of Jawaharlal Nehru, chose the path of planned development, as we all know. A great deal of efforts were put on scientific and industrial growth, which were supposed to transform India from a traditional to a modern society. But was this solely due to Nehru and his supporters and followers' activities? The answer lies in what happened in India before 1947, especially in the late 1930s, after Netaji was elected as Congress president in 1938. It was Netaji Subhas Bose who founded the National Planning Committee and appointed Nehru as its chairman. First, it was thought that very eminent scientist Vishwesvaraya would become the chairman, but because of many political reasons, Nehru was ultimately appointed the chairman of this NPC or National Planning Committee. And this committee chalked out plans for India's planned development in future. Netaji not only understood that independent India would be able to develop and solve its problems by embracing planned growth based on modern science. And of course, as Purabi has mentioned, has drawn our attention that how he was held by Moscow. And I think also, I agree with that, because I think Netaji was already thinking of a Soviet model of development. So it was his vision, it was his idea, it was his plan that to solve the problems of India, India needs to embrace planned growth based on modern science technology. Of course, Nehru and a number of other leaders of left-wing Congress shared this view. But it is really unfortunate that Netaji's role was subsequently forgotten by many or not at all mentioned during the Nehruvian period. Nehru himself never mentioned about Netaji in discovery of India. Only after 50 years of India's independence, in 1997, we first see that the Planning Commission published a report where it was mentioned that Netaji was the pioneer, but in planning, but it took 50 years for independent India to give that recognition. The aim of my talk today, as I have pointed out already, is to historically contextualize Netaji's ideas and activities in this respect, in order to understand the historic significance of his role. I will attempt to do that by tracing the developments within the Indian National Congress during that period before Netaji became the president, and I would like to point out how there was a continuity in some respect as well as a break. This might sound a bit contradictory, but I will try to show why I think it was a culmination or continuity in one sense, as well as a break in another sense. So I will trace the developments within the Indian National Congress from its inception regarding planning, industrialization and everything, and also what is happening outside Indian National Congress within the greater nationalist circle, Indian community, and particularly focus on the emergence of a group of talented scientists of India who thought that India needed the growth or building up of nationalist science. We started from Mahendralal Sarkar and culminated and reached the vantage point in Meghnad Saha, with whom Netaji constantly discussed about India's planning and everything, and who was, of course, a consistent critic of Gandhian model of development. Now, so to talk about Indian National Congress, the sources of history, you know how during the moderate phase of Indian National Congress, there were prayers and petitions coming with each Congress annual session. And here I would just like to mention, which is relevant in this connection, that the attitude of Indian National Congress, what was the attitude of Indian National Congress towards growth of planning, towards growth of science and technology and industry in India? We see that the attitudes of Indian National Congress over the years evolved, not in a very unilinear pattern, not in a very coherent pattern, but there were ups and downs and very unevenness in Indian National Congress, thinking of Indian National Congress and its leaders. Now, from 1885, from the very beginning, we see that in almost every session, the Indian National Congress would discuss and pass resolutions praying the British government to do something for industrial and technical growth of India. Now, what was the context? Why Indian National Congress was asking for this? Because this actually arose, this concern arose from two reasons or two contexts. One is that it grew as a response to the immediate exigencies of life in colonial India, such as the necessity of getting rid of, or at least coping with the situation created by poverty, by disease and disasters, natural disasters like flood and famine. And secondly, it also arose in reaction to the wider context of colonial exploitation and administrative control. Whenever famines occurred in British India, crops failed, and there were outbreak of epidemics in different parts. And there were many, particularly from the 1880s onwards. We see the Congress reacted by expressing concern for improvement in such areas and industries, agriculture and healthcare. Congress also criticized government's indifference to technical education. And during 1885 till 1905, the Congress leadership would continue to make requests for reforms within the existing order. It adopted resolutions from time to time. For example, in 1887, in its third annual session, the Indian National Congress resolved, I'm quoting from the resolution, that having regard to the poverty of the people, it is desirable that the government be moved to elaborate a system of technical education suitable for the condition of the country, to encourage indigenous manufacturers by a more strict observance of the orders already existing, unquote. Next year also, we see the Indian National Congress requested the government to appoint what it called a mixed commission to inquire into the contemporary industrial condition of India. So, I can continue to cite examples, but the main point of my argument is that Indian National Congress, of course, consistently during that period, moderate phase, was requesting government for release of funds for spread of technical education. And what was the response of the British government? The British government had very lukewarm attitude towards spending for development of science and technology-oriented education, at least till the First World War. Whatever imperial scientific activities developed under government patronage mainly aimed at serving the British interests. Very few institutions actually developed for scientific and technical education. You know, in 1835, the Calcutta Medical College was established, and also the British government did not fund much. It was because of Indian philanthropy, to a large extent, that the funding came. And in 1847, the first engineering college came up at Roorkee, which is now the IIT Roorkee. Education in these spheres were not up to the mark. The aim was to create lower grade employees for different official works like public works department, geological field surveys, field works, and so on. So Congress clamored for better education and end of racial discrimination, but nothing happened. On the other hand, what was happening outside the Indian National Congress? Here also we see that important developments, as I was saying, were taking place, which ultimately culminated in the emergence of Venkat Shaha in the 1930s, the emergence of Science and Culture Group, with whom Netaji was in close contact. But we should start the story at the beginning of these efforts. The second half of the 19th century saw this interesting development. Many Indians understood by then that the British government was not at all interested to promote quality education and fundamental scientific research. So Indians themselves took initiative in this field. As we all know, I am just recollecting that, 19th century witnessed an intellectual renaissance in India, including Bengal. Curiosity and growth of Western science was an integral part of it. Calcutta's elite institutions were important both for the interest in science they stimulated and for the opportunities they gave for individual advancement. Mohinderlal Sarkar, who was a famous physician and founder of the Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science, which is still there in Jadavpur. The physicist Jagdish Chandra Bose, famous chemist, of course he was a Gandhian also, Prafulla Chandra Ray, they all attended the prestigious High School in Calcutta. Mohinderlal went on to Hindu College before joining Calcutta Medical College and later became the second MD degree holder, Doctor of Medicine. But later on he is shifted to homeopathy practice. J.C. Bose also attended St. Xavier's, and Ray also attended Presidency. So these were the elite institutions which produced many Indian scientists who later went abroad to get training, except Mohinderlal Sarkar. This first generation of Indian scientists also were heirs to intellectual and scientific traditions of India as well. Prof. Chandra, he wrote History of Hindu Chemistry in 2 volumes to show that India also, in ancient India also there is growth of chemistry and everything. So one momentous event in the growth of national science was the foundation of Indian Association for Cultivation of Science by Mohenjo-dal Sarkar. This actually heralded the beginning of nationalist science. There is a transformation from colonial science to nationalist science. And we see that this trend was continued, and later Netaji embraced this trend of growth of nationalist science. Sarkar also started a journal, the Calcutta Journal of Medicine, through which he gave a call for greater Indian involvement in science, which he pointed out was the key of India's progress and self-esteem. He was one of the pioneers who saw science as having a practical role in India's nation building. The association succeeded in taking science out of the narrow confines of the Asiatic Society of Bengal, which was then the only establishment which talked about science, but it was basically dominated by the Europeans. And Mohenjo-dal Sarkar inspired a new generation of scientists, including Jagadish Bose, P.C. Roy, C.V. Raman, who, for the first Indian scientist who got Nobel Prize, C.V. Raman. He worked in Indian Association for Cultivation of Science. Again, during the Swadeshi period, we see the Dawn Society, and before that the Dawn newspaper run by Satish Chandra and others. And other individuals, other associations were there, who always sought to propagate that scientific industrial growth of development of India was needed to get rid of poverty. They wanted to inspire independent scientific researchers. With the rise of extremist faction within Indian National Congress during the 1890s onwards, and growth of militant nationalism, there was emphasis on growth of India's self-reliance in education, science and technology. During Swadeshi movement also, we know a number of institutions came up. Nationalist educational and technological institutions arose. National Council of Education was formed. There emerged the College of Engineering and Technology in Jadavpur, the University College of Science of Calcutta University, and so on. Now, here I would also like to mention, we should not forget the role of the Indian philanthropists in this field, because they played a tremendously important role in rapid expansion of science in Indian universities and institutions, and compensated for the colonial regime's relative indifference. Well, the Indians provided scholarships and endowments. It started with Dwarkanath Tagore. He also provided funding for Indian students to go abroad and get training in medicine. Ramkamal Sen also. So there are many Indian, wealthy Indians who actually invested, and they liberally invested in this sort of efforts. Another very momentous event was 1908, the founding of the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, which we know still exists, and Parsi industrialist J.N. Tata funded, also Mysore state contributed. So we see that all these are happening without the British giving any fund. Of course, they sometimes try to dominate and control the working of these institutions, but they rarely they made any expenditure for the growth of this. Now, this was one side of colonial exploitation, or you can say the colonial indifference and neglect of India's education and technical growth. Now, Indian National Congress, what it was doing, it was just praying to the government to do something, raise funds and everything, but they are not taking an actual step towards organizing. And it was Netaji who became the Congress only after he became the Congress president, he took actual steps. And that is why we owe to him so much. In 1914, Indian Science Congress was established. In 1920, we see P.C. Roy became its president, first Indian president, and C.V. Raman became the secretary in 1921. We know there was high tide of nationalism. There we see the non-cooperation movement, and this was going on parallelly also. And of course, what was happening in the field of politics was also influencing and impacting the other fields as well. And the efforts of these scientists were very much also linked to a cultural nationalism, what may be called cultural nationalism, India's growth, India's self-help growth, and India's development of India's autonomy in the field of science and culture. So this Indian Science Congress became an important forum for national science. P.C. Roy delivered a staunchly patriotic address as president in 1920. His address once again underlined the fact that India needed a kind of growth of nationalist science for nation building. But again, that was not actually influencing the Congress, because we know already in Congress there is emergence of Gandhi, who was very much against the Western and modern technology. Now, this would sound a bit extreme, because it is sometimes argued that Gandhi was not as such against science. He later on accepted science. He talked about village electrification, but I would like to point out that he was forced to actually admit this, because he himself said that what he said in Hind Swaraj in 1909 was his true view. There he said that all these modern factories and medicines and these are sins. So, but later on he had to admit the science as technology, science and modernity as necessary evil. He was not very enthusiastic at all about it. So, as I was saying, that in 1916, I talk about what was happening with the International Congress in 1916, we see that the British government then constituted the Indian Industrial Commission. And a long note which was appended to the report of this commission was written by Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya. And here, his views, as he expressed here, was that India was backward in various fields, including industry, agriculture, transport, science and technical education. And he pointed out that there should be integrated development based on modern science and technology. But he saved that part only. Of course, as a result of his efforts, the Banaras Hindu University was founded, and this university laid great emphasis on science and technical education. But not that Congress went all out to embrace this view. And we know that after 1916, many things changed, because there was emergence of Gandhi. After different regional satyagrahas, he then launched the Rowlatt Satyagraha, and then there was a launching of non-violent, non-cooperation movement, 1921-22. And here, so Gandhi emerged as the undisputed leader of Indian National Congress. Of course, there was a change in the nature of Indian National Congress. There is no denying of that because of Gandhi's emergence, because everyone could become the member, and it also had a great organization back then. But then again, we know after that, the Chauri Chaura incident, because of Chauri Chaura incident, the non-violent non-cooperation was withdrawn, and there was a tremendous frustration. Even Nehru mentioned about that. And then Congress entered after the failure of the nonviolent or withdrawal of nonviolent non-cooperation movement. Now Congress entered the constructive phase. Of course, there was Swaraj Party who were for fighting the election, and there were no changes and pro changes. I'm not recounting that history here. But I would like to mention this because I just want to keep in mind that what the Gandhian group was doing, or the Gandhian followers were doing, they were following a path of social reconstruction based on revival of course, cottage industries, development of cottage industries. And there was Cottage Industries Commission that came up. So Gandhi, as I said, he wanted to reject Western science, modern technology, Western modernization. And sometimes Gandhi is called also a postmodernist in today's parlance. Now, that is a question of debate, of course. But there is no doubt that he was he always thought the Gandhian model of development was that machine was an ally of capitalism and imperialism, which impoverished India. So, to revive India, to get rid of poverty, according to him, growth of cottage industries only would solve India's problems of poverty and unemployment. And under his leadership, Congress adopted the program of reviving and restoring traditional industries and crafts. There is no place for promoting scientific and technical growth and progress in Gandhian time. Apart from political difference, this was also there, the main cause of difference between Gandhi and Subhas, of course. Gandhi had many critics and followers, both critics and followers among patriotic and nationalist Indians. Now one may mention Tagore here. Tagore, of course, was very much a supporter of Gandhian part of non-violence. But then he was also sometimes denouncing machine. About, I don't know many of, I don't know how many students have gone to Tagore's writings on that. Because we know that he wrote very important plays also, Muktadhara, where he kind of allegorically was saying that machine it can become an ally of exploiters. Okay, and also in Rakto Korobe, another symbolic play, which also to a certain extent expressed his views and his hatred or his fear of modern Western method and technology and science. But he himself clarified that he was not against science, modern science per se, but it was how it is used. And here we see that he was also different from Gandhi in different ways, apart from he was not accepting Gandhian path of Charkha, adopting Charkha, and even non-cooperation movement. He was not supporting that also, despite C.F. Andrews' many attempts to bring Gandhi and Tagore together for discussion, because Andrews sometimes actually worked as a bridge between these two great men. But none of them could really influence other, Gandhi and Tagore. So they kept to their own convictions about non-violent non-cooperation. And another thing, Tagore was also very much for embracing Western science, application of Western science and technology in agriculture. Gandhi would never accept that also. Rather, Tagore was very much keen on Subhas's, later on Netaji's efforts at national planning and all that. Mendasha went to Shantiniketan to win over Tagore's views, Tagore's opinions he sought, and Tagore was very much favorable to this idea of industrial growth and scientific growth and everything. So as I said, that Gandhi had both critics and followers, and here I would like again to point out that the left wing, there was development particularly in the 1930s within the Congress of a left-leaning group, including of course Jawaharlal Nehru, who also wanted to modernize India, who also wanted to follow the path of scientific and technological growth of India. And one, I would now come back to the story of Meghnad Saha, because he had a direct connection to Subhas, to Netaji during this period, and earlier also. We trace that connection also. So among the scientists during this period, the most consistent critic of Gandhi was, of course, Meghnad Saha, the famous physicist. He vehemently criticized Gandhian methods of village industry, non-industrialization, all throughout his life. And what is the connection between Saha and Netaji? We know that there are several documents. Even Saha himself said that he basically convinced Netaji for embracing national planning. But I would like to argue that it was not like that. Netaji himself was at a place when he himself was considering about India's industrial growth and planning, based on planning, planned development, embracing science and technology. And it so happened that Meghnad Saha also discussed this with Netaji after he became the Congress president, and then, of course, Netaji adopted this program. Now, they had an old connection, of course. We see that in August 1938, if we can trace Meghnad Saha's contributions also, after Gandhi became Congress president at Haripura in 1938. Now, in Modern Review, Meghnad Saha wrote an essay, Philosophy of Industrialization. Here he again presented a critique of Gandhian views on growth of cottage industries. Saha argued that only modern industrialization would solve India's problem of poverty. Eminent Gandhian critic J.C. Kumarapta protested against Saha, of course. But he could not really substantiate his claim that village industries would abolish India's problems of poverty and everything. Now, Saha was also a very great organizer. He was not only a physicist, he was a great organizer. Most important event of the 1930s. We need to trace that. We need to know about that to understand how the environment was created for Netaji to actually take the step of appointing National Planning Committee. In 1933, he established the Indian Science News Association, Saha established. And in 1935, the Science and Culture periodical came out under his editorship, where Netaji also contributed in writing. The Science and Culture group, this group, led by Saha, was totally dedicated to popularization of science and bringing about a technical revolution. And it vehemently, openly opposed Gandhian method of economic development of India. Now, Saha and Netaji had an earlier connection. In 1913, both were students of presidency. They were coming to Scottish, of course. And Subhas's elder brothers were classmates of Saha, actually. During 1922, 17 September, the first All Bengal Youth Congress felicitated Saha. Netaji was then president of this body. Saha became the president of executive committee and Netaji one of the 3 associate presidents. The main aim of this first meeting was national reconstruction. So we see that as early as the 1920s also, Netaji was giving thoughts for nationalist reconstruction. And Saha then joined Allahabad University in 1923. And he came back to Calcutta in 1938 when he joined Calcutta University as Pali professor. So during this period, there was hardly any direct contact with Netaji, I mean physical contact. And Netaji, however, enthusiastically praised Science and Culture Journal, supported the view that science should be the basis of development. Now, as I was saying that it is sometimes held that Meghnad Saha influenced Netaji to take up this the path of national planning and everything. But researchers prove that Netaji himself was thinking on these lines also. He was also planning India's nationalist reconstruction based on science, and there are many writings where he actually mentioned that. In 1933, Netaji wrote that independent India would need to adopt planning for national growth and development. You know, the Soviet model had already been successful of planned development. In 1935 also, he mentioned that the left wing within Indian National Congress believed that state planning was needed for growth of agriculture, industry, and so on. So evidently, this thought had crossed his mind before he discussed this with Saha around 1938. In its Wardha meeting in 1937, the Congress Working Committee passed a resolution relating to the appointment of an experts committee to explore the possibilities of an all-India industrial plan. And as we know as students of history that in 1937, Congress formed government in 7 provinces. It then became very urgent that Congress adopt and implement a coherent policy of planning. But nothing actually happened till Netaji became the president. He was elected Congress president at Haripura in February 1938. And the blueprint for free India was outlined by Netaji in his presidential address itself. He unveiled a secular, broad-based blueprint for national reconstruction and thus gave birth to the concept of national planning. He categorically stated that the first task of the government of free India would be to set up a national planning commission. Later, in July, the Congress Working Committee adopted clear-cut resolution that a committee would be formed to plan all India industrialization. In October, Subhas arranged a conference of industry ministers in Delhi. Netaji pointed out in his inaugural speech that the Congress members should not only struggle for freedom, but also attempt to think about and apply their energy for national reconstruction. 7 December 1938, first session of Planning Committee was held in Bombay. Nehru was made the chairman. Subhas requested him. Netaji opined that a comprehensive plan should have 2 parts, an immediate program and a long period program. Long-term plans were needed to eradicate poverty. He asserted that India needed rapid industrialization. He wanted India's industrial policy to focus on mother industries like power, metal production, machine and tools manufacture, transport and basic chemicals. The working of the NPC stands out as an example of a truly national venture in which leading scientists, technical experts, industrialists all participated. It also included a representative of the All India village industries to counter the view which many of the Gandhians are propagating, that NPC was advocating heavy industries only at the cost of cottage industries, which would lead rather to more and more unemployment. The NPC worked through 29 subcommittees, like energy, education, public finance, land policy, population, engineering, industries, communications, transport, scientific instrumentation, and so on. So it was a very elaborate plan made under Netaji's guidance. Another sub-panel was formed on census and statistics to collect and provide data necessary for the planning exercise. Each subcommittee was given a deadline to complete the task and periodic reviews were held. Here one should also mention that Netaji also thought about India's population problem, and here also he had held different views than Gandhi. Netaji was very much for applying artificial means for birth control. He was also supported by Tagore. But Gandhi always said that artificial means of birth control are not acceptable. Here also we see Netaji's views regarding application of modern scientific methods for population policies. And this was also the kind of path which was chosen by independent India later on. Netaji thus was not only a pioneer of economic plan, but as is evident, was a strong believer in the application of science and technology for development. NPC lost impetus once the Congress ministers resigned following the outbreak of World War II and ceased to function with Nehru's imprisonment later. But this committee marked the beginning of the party's active commitment to state planning and the use of science and technology to serve nation-building goals. This might sound a little bit as if it was not it was an easy task, but it was not at all an easy task. What Netaji did at that time was not at all an easy task because he was always facing hostilities from other camps within the Congress. He was totally opposed to the Gandhian model, believed that India could achieve development only by embracing modern science and technology different fields. It can be assumed, and there was actually strong hostility he faced, and even the final report of the planning committee was also suppressed. It did not see the light of the day at that period, which is very unfortunate. And as I mentioned earlier, of course, after 50 years of independence, a correction was sought to be made when in 1997 the planning committee in its publication pointed out that Netaji was the pioneer of India's plan development. So on this 125th anniversary, we should continue to recognize the debt of independent India to this great man who was not only a heroic fighter against exploitation, but also was a great organizer who dedicated his life to fight against colonial exploitation and brought freedom, but also was a great visionary who contributed immensely to India's nationalist reconstruction. So this is the legacy of Netaji for us, which we should never forget and should continue to remember and celebrate as long as possible. Thank you very much for
Many thanks to Professor Mukherjee for a very well articulated and informative lecture on aspects of Netaji's work and contribution which sometimes remains outside of the populist touch. The session is now open for a very, very few number of questions if possible. So if any of the students are interested, they may raise their hand and ask their question. Please introduce yourself and the department and semester before asking the question. Time is very short and brief, so keep yourselves also very, very brief.
ম্যাডাম আপনাদের দুজনকে নমস্কার জানাই, মানে কি বলবো, আর
তাহলে এখানে এসো, এখানে এসো।
ম্যাডাম আমার ছোট একটা প্রশ্ন ছিল যে আমি প্রথমে শুনতে পেলাম যে চিত্তরঞ্জন দাসের আন্ডারে উনি যে দেশ সেবক এবং পরবর্তীকালে দেশনায়ক, হ্যাঁ, এটা হন, আর এতে এসসিতে উনি একটা মিলিটারি ট্রেনিং পান আর কি। তো এই তিনটে জিনিস আমি দেখলাম, আর তার সাথে আর একটা কানেক্টিং যে কংগ্রেসে যখন ছিলেন সেখানে লেফট উইং এর সাথে উনি একটা ডিরেক্ট যোগ ছিল। তো আমার একটা কোয়েশ্চেন যে এই তিনটে যখন আমি দেশ সেবক, দেশ নায়ক আর মিলিটারি ট্রেনিং, এই তিনটে লেফট উইংয়ের সাথে কি যায়? মানে সেবা বা যুদ্ধ, এটা কি লেফট উইংয়ের সাথে যায়? আমি কাইন্ডলি একটু
একটা জিনিস একটা মানুষের জীবনে আমি প্রথম থেকে দেখি অত্যন্তভাবে ডিবেট একটা করতেন যে স্পিরিচুয়ালিজম স্পিরিচুয়ালিজম, কারণ সেই সময় এবং প্রিন্সিপাল এত বেশি ইকুইপ ছিলেন, দে ইউজ টু আর্গিউ ইন দ্য মর্নিং। সকালবেলা ক্লাসে যাওয়ার আগে সঙ্গে উনি আর্গিউ করতেন। তো সুতরাং হি ওয়াজ অলসো ভেরি হ্যাপি টু হ্যাভ দ্যাট টাইপ অফ স্টুডেন্ট। এইরকম একটা স্টেজে গিয়ে হঠাৎ নোটিশ দেখা যায়, সেটা হয়তো সুপ্রতিম পরবর্তীকালে খুঁজে পাবে যেরকম ট্রেনিংয়ে যাচ্ছে। যেমন আমাদেরও সময় ছিল যে স্কুলে নোটিশ করতো যে গ্রুপ এতে যাবে কিনা, গাইডে যাবে কিনা, এতে সব ছিল। এখন তো আমি জানি না হয় কিনা। তাই সুতরাং উনি সেটা দেখেই করেছিলেন। তারা ছোটোবেলা থেকেই ওনার একটা ছিল, ওনাকে কিন্তু ভুলিয়ে ফেললে চলবে না যে হি ইজ এ স্পিরিচুয়ালিস্ট, কোনো মতেই নয়। এবং ওনাকে গুটিয়ে ফেলা চলবে না আরেকটার সঙ্গে যে হ্যাঁ উনি একটা দারুণ মেটেরিয়ালিস্ট, তাও নন, দারুণ ন্যাশনালিস্ট, তাও নন, দারুণ কমিউনিস্ট, তাও নন। সব কিছু সংমিশ্রণে তৈরি সুভাষ, যার জন্য সুভাষকে আজও মানুষ বুঝতে পারে না। সুভাষের প্রত্যেকটা আসপেক্ট দেখে বিচার করতে হয় যে উনি ঠিক মতন কোন জায়গাটায় দাঁড়িয়ে আছেন। তো সেটাই যদি হয়, তাহলে যখন স্ট্র্যাটেজিস্ট হচ্ছেন তার আগে তো তার এতগুলো ট্রেনিং হয়ে গেছে। এতটা ট্রেনিং না হলে তো স্ট্র্যাটেজিস্ট হওয়া যায় না। যার জন্য আজকেরও ইংল্যান্ডের বহু জার্নালে তার সম্পর্কে লেখা হয় যে হি নেভার ইউজ টু নো, ডাজন্ট হ্যাভ এনি মিলিটারি ট্রেনিং। ঠিক এরকম ধরনের কথা আর্মড ফোর্সেসের লোকেরা লিখছেন। জাপানের একজন মিলিটারি ম্যান লিখে এসেছিলেন কলকাতায়, তার সঙ্গে লং ডিবেট হয়েছে যে এরকম কোনো কথা কোথাও লেখা নেই যে তার যে ইন্টেলেকচুয়াল ক্যাপাসিটি, যেটা দিয়ে তার স্ট্র্যাটেজি দেখেছেন, অত বড় স্ট্র্যাটেজি সেকেন্ড ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়ারে যখন দেখতে গেছে 1943 সালে, সময় কোথায়? বেশি তো পৌঁছেছেন 43, তখন তো যুদ্ধ হয়ে যাচ্ছে, জার্মানি অ্যাটাক করেছে, পোল্যান্ড গেছে, কেউ অসর্ববাড়িও। কিন্তু তিনি সেখানে হালকা কি করে বললেন, তোজো দিলেন 90,000 সৈন্য, এবং তিনি জায়গা পেলেন, তোজোকে বলে বুঝিয়ে বললেন জায়গা ছাড়ি, এটা দেখতে পারে আন্দামান ও নিকোবর, তা না হলে হবে না। আজাদির জায়গা পেলেন, land is there, population is there, he made the government. এখন কয়েন এক্সিবিশন শেষ হয়ে গেল, গভর্নমেন্টের মধ্যে কয়েন আছে, স্কুল আছে, তার ট্রেনিং আছে, সমস্ত উল্টুকি টাইমের মধ্যে করেছে। এবং তার দেওয়া যে নোটগুলো ছাপানো হয়েছিল তাদের বিরুদ্ধে আর যে হুকুমতে আজাদ হিন্দ, সেগুলো সমস্ত বেশিরভাগ করেছিল ব্রহ্মপুত্র, কারণ অ্যাটাকটা ছিল নর্থ ইস্ট থেকে, একদম প্লেন সার্ভিস যাচ্ছিল নর্থ ইস্ট থেকে বেশি, এবং নর্থ ইস্ট থেকে সমস্ত জায়গায় এই কাগজগুলো ছড়িয়ে পড়েছে। যার জন্য আজকে আমরা ডিমান্ড করছি যে অন্য যাদেরই ছবি থাক না থাক, এবারে কৃষ্ণ সুভাষ চন্দ্র বোসের ছবি 100 টাকার মধ্যে আনতে হবে, 100-200 টাকার মধ্যে আনতে হবে। তো সুতরাং একটা মানুষের মধ্যে যে এত তার কোয়ালিটি এবং এত মানে থেকে ছড়িয়ে থাকা জিনিসকে একটা জায়গায় সংযুক্ত করে তিনি যে বলতে পারতেন, এটা কিন্তু একটা লেয়ার, যার জন্য আমি বলি যে মানে রেভলিউশনারি আইকন পাওয়া যাবে।
There is time only for one more question. One.
Good evening. Myself Good evening. Myself Dr. Sushil from Semester 6 Department of History. My question is, in the beginning of your lecture, ma'am, you said that Netaji had tried to incorporate the Soviet model of development. We know in People's Republic of China as well, Mao had tried to incorporate the Soviet model, but there is a very, very big difference between these two models. What do you think about the influence that led Netaji to a different way, that differed Netaji's way from the Mao's way? Are you asking this question to Professor Mukherjee? Yes.
Difference between Mao's way and
Netaji's way regarding
Well,
this?
I think these are completely different because if you know the history of Chinese revolution, you must be knowing that how Mao Zedong actually also deviated from, even Lenin deviated from classical Marxism, right? And Mao Zedong deviated even further because it was an agricultural country, basically a feudal country, China, where he led the peasantry, mostly the peasantry led the revolt, and but in Subhas's case, in India, I think Subhas was, Subhas, like Meghna Shah also, they mentioned about Sun Yat-sen, Meghna Shah was mentioned. So, but Subhas was mentioned about Soviet Russia, but I don't know if Purabi can enlighten us about that, where in his writing has mentioned about China's example or not. I haven't come to that. This is a work in progress, but I will have to dig in further to know about it. But basically, apparently, I can see that Subhas chose his own path of development. Of course, there was the Soviet planned development was happening in Soviet Russia. So I think that was why in 1933 I came across a reference where he said about Soviet model and everything. So that was, and in the context of what Purabi was saying about Soviet Russia and all, that I mentioned about that, the Soviet Russia model of development. When Nehru came to power, that was Soviet Russia's planned model was like that, socialist model of development. So it was, of course, it was around the state taking control. But then I won't say Subhas was a statist. I won't say that also. That what Gandhi has argued that Gandhi was like against that kind of planned development because that would mean give state absolute power. But I don't think that was Subhas's intention, Netaji's intention, nothing like that. I don't think like that. But that would be driving the thing to another way, like he was going to the fascist path and everything. But I don't think at all that is true. So that is why about Soviet Russia's model, of course, was different because it arose in a different context, arose in a different situation. China had a different situation. So these are all different. And basic impetus came from the actual existing condition in those countries. It was not like what the classical Marxist theories talked about, So they were great organizers and they were talented people who thought what would be best for our country. And Subhas was also another talented and another great visionary who thought what would be best for India. He was thinking in terms of India. Okay, so I think that we should give credit to Subhas's own talent and own thinking about India's development, because India was uppermost in his mind. Free India was uppermost in his mind. So of course he was to a certain extent talking about Soviet because that was the main model which was there. But I don't think he was always be like following in toto the Soviet model of development.
The last question, yes. Introduce yourself.
Good evening, ma'am. I am Ayun Dutta from Political Science Department. My question was to Professor Roy. We come to know from your speech that Subhas was well trained in military strategy during his college times and afterwards. So, and this actually informs his Good evening, ma'am. I am Ayun Dutta from Political Science Department. Political Science. Yes, ma'am. My question was that we come to know from your speech that Subhas was well trained in military strategy, the knowledge of military and how to organize armies and how to arm the people. So, in spite of all this, why does the INA fail to accomplish its objective of taking Delhi?
tour, the Indian National Army originally is the British Indian Army. They were occupying the Southeast Asia, all the countries captured by the British. And later on during 43, early 43, that has been captured by Tojo from the Japanese side, the Axis power. And when Tojo got around, someone is in 90,000, 80,000 anyway, they are mostly not, they are all from the British Indian Army. They have been renamed that they are the Liberators. Renamed as a Liberator, Liberation Army. And this Liberation Army was brought to Rashbihari Bose. Bose was organizing Indian Independence League. The people, the civilians, and he was arising in them that try to support this movement in the Southeast Asia. That was Bose's duty. Then they were thinking about the leader of this 90,000. Now 90,000 was led by Mohan Singh and Pritam Singh. Now what happened to Rashbihari found, other people also, A.C. Chatterjee also found that Pritam Singh and Mohan Singh definitely a very good warrior soldier, but they don't hardly know what is happening all over the world. They don't know the situation of Europe. They don't know the situation of the Axis and the war situation. You see, during the war, to go on to the war specialist, but so much I've read and interacted with the armed forces, two things are needed. One thing, your intellect, and second thing, your fighting capacity. So whenever the fighting capacity dominates the intellect, now shoot, time is Akraman. And when that Akraman is not there, your intellectual capacity is working. Subhas used to have both, all. That is really something to appreciate. And that's why today those people in London, the museum, they are making all sorts of debate and all the time I'm sending the answer, but try to understand the man. He's unique by himself. And that way he did his best, but the thing is that time World War was ending, and you are right. If the Britishers would not have got the time, General Slim, if he hasn't got the time to get that news, definitely they have done something there in the Northeast. But unfortunately, we had to come back. But anyway, we won because we got our independence. That you have to say, that we won.
That's one more question. Just one more last question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Asha Singha of Senpur Philosophy Department. My question is to Purabi ma'am. I have watched several interview videos on family members of Netaji on YouTube. I came to know from them as many of the family members and relatives of Netaji said they saw, and even some said that Netaji came to their house in disguise after the spreading of the news of his death. And there we all know about Gumnami Baba. So maybe a controversial question, but my question is, as a researcher on Subhas Chandra Bose, what is your opinion on such a matter, ma'am? Is Netaji still alive?
But we must appreciate the hope in her voice.
Because many spiritual persons can stay alive even for 200 or 300 years, and I really believe on that because I am on a spiritual path, to be honest. And that's why I'm asking this question. What is your opinion, ma'am?
Come back to yourself.
Students, please settle down. Let her answer the question.
It is unquoting Justice Mukherjee, because I was the main opponent of the Mukherjee Commission, which has been thrown out. That report totally been rejected. But even then, he was a very competent judge, I must say, and he has given that explanation, medical explanation, as a human being, up to 75, every part of the body, it works exactly. No, not always, but that is the general rule, medical rule. After 75 to 78, he is telling that slowly, body's other functioning becomes lesser and lesser. 80, which I have crossed already, but you see I'm still talking to you, giving you the answer, and the mentality is working. So, these are exceptions. Because it is working, that's why I can't walk properly, and other things are there. So, if you take it that way, maximum you can go 90 like that. Now there are interpretations, Nehru started definitely, that I am in a problem. He wrote a note to his IB head, Bulanar Malik, that Malik, tell me what I am going to do, because all over India people are telling that Bose is alive, Subhas is coming. That was a threat to Nehru. It was surely a threat. So there are 10 dummies were there. Bulanar Malik answered in that Nehru. In the file you can see that make 10 dummies. You know, all over the world, all eminent leaders, especially the political leaders, they are having dummies. It's not unnatural or unusual. So after that, 10 dummies been surveyed by Justice Mukherjee, or wherever the people mentioned, gave their this thing, what it calls, affidavit. In that affidavit, that Guru is sitting there. The Baba is sitting there, the other Baba is in Solmari, the other Baba Gumnami is there, Faizabad, so many things. But he personally visited all the 10 places of India, inquired, made a proper inquiry, and gave his report that he found them that they are not, all after going through it. But even then that report has been rejected. It's a time to bring back that report, or to at least people know that what exactly he did. One thing, and second is the DNA test. About DNA test, people keep on talking, but he contacted the 5 or 6 best DNA test centers of the world, and they sent those stones and all from the Red temple. They came to Calcutta. I've seen it also. He especially called me and said that I have a look. And those stones were sent all over the world to make the DNA test. That has been on the spot rejected by the specialists. Well, it is cannot be done. These are all stones. So these sort of things are in the report. So how the government will make out that these sort of things they are going to present before the public? So let us do something. You people are young generation only asking questions will do. Fight back. Ask for the report. Then I will be happy. Thank you.
A very big thank you to all of our students and to the 2 guests today. We are at the end of our program, but last but not the least, we have a very, very special ceremony with which we would like to end today. During the year-long celebration of the 125th birth anniversary of Netaji, we also conducted an online national level essay competition that was to commemorate not only Netaji's 125th birth anniversary, but also that of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is also an alumni of this college. We have the prize winners of the competition with us today, and I would request the dignitaries on the dais to kindly give away the prizes as I announce them. I will first like to call upon, and we have 2, or rather a joint 3rd prize, and I would like to first call upon one of us, Richik Shawkar of Scottish Church College. He is joint 3rd in the national level online essay competition. Come up on the stage. I would request Vice Principal Sir Dr. Supratim Das to kindly award you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Richie. Now, I would like to request Ananya Sengupta of VMMC and Safdarjung Memorial Hospital to kindly come up on stage as she is the joint third winner. I request our principal ma'am, Dr. Madhumanjali Mandal, to kindly give away the award. Thank you, ma'am. Now for the second prize, I would like to call upon stage Abhrojit Bhattacharjee, again of Scottish Church College, to receive the award from Professor Sujata Mukherjee. Ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And the first prize goes to Shinjini Dasgupta of La Martiniere for Girls. A big round of applause for our first prize winner. I request Dr. Purabi to kindly give away the prize.
First she's alive, and now I'm prize for one more
I think she deserves a round of applause from all of us. Thank you. We are right about the end of our program, but at the end of it all, we must show gratitude for everyone who has come together to organize this program. So I would now like to request of Scottish Church College Former Students Association, Dr. Sadananda Bhattacharjee, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Let me start my vote of thanks with the last question the lady asked. Yes, Netaji is there in all our heart. Netaji Bose, the icon of India, an alumnus, around whom, after 125 years still, there exists suspense, thrill, romanticism and hero worship among the Indians in near and far corner of the country. Thus, giving a befitting tribute to this hero at 125th anniversary is a pride for all of us. With the proper assistance of ex-principal Dr. Orpita Mukherjee, Dr. S. Mukherjee, the Secretary of the College Council, Dr. Madhumanjali Mandal, the present Principal, Dr. Supratim Das, the present Vice Principal, and the IQSE members, we all could remain dynamic even with the threat of the pandemic, and we could come to this closing ceremony today. Professor Sujata Mukherjee, the excellent orator, deserves special thanks. And her critical analysis has categorically showed us that Netaji Bose was at least many steps ahead in his thinking in terms of modern science and technology and planning over the contemporary leaders of the period which she had discussed categorically today. Though she is one of us, But without Professor Purabi, tribute to Netaji remains incomplete. We thank her for her kind presence and opening the archive on Netaji and Vivekananda today in the college library, and I hope it will remain open for the students of the coming days. They will come here and see the legacy of this college with these two great alumnus. We thank all the dignitaries, all the teachers, all those present over here, and especially the students, because you are the future of tomorrow, you are the future of the country. So your presence have definitely made this occasion very graceful. We thank the support staffs, we thank the management of this college for allowing these functions or these ceremonies over the years, both online and offline. And I hope for the last 1 year, we, the former Students Association, are very much grateful to the college authorities and the management for their help and extending hands to complete this particular function and this ceremony. Thank you very much.
Before the national anthem, I really I want to, from core of my heart and behalf of my vice principal also, I would like to give our thanks to the coordinators of this program today. And thank you Aniruddha, and thank you Srimoi, big round of applause today. And also to Subhas, for without his help, it was not possible to make arrangement for direct telecast, which we have done, and Gautam Babu also helped us. And Lolita, and yeah, she is mentioning other names. Yes, Arundhati, Lolita is always there. And Biplav, yes, the silent workers. Biplav, Arundhati, Lolita, thank you. So now the mic again I am handing over to Srimoi.
We have come to the end of today's program. Before we end today's program with our national anthem, which will be led by Professors Lolita Rai and Arundhati Das, I would request the students, before you leave, we have slight refreshment for you. Please collect your food packets from booth number 3.